The golden afternoon sun cast long shadows across the paddock of the Sullivan Ranch in West Texas, where a small crowd had gathered for what everyone politely called a matching event, but what really amounted to an auction of sorts. 5 young women stood in a line, each hoping to be chosen by one of the prosperous ranchers who'd come from across 3 counties seeking wives. Among them stood Rose Whitmore, 23 years old, with light brown hair pulled back in a simple style and wearing a pale yellow dress with lace trim that her stepmother had begrudgingly provided for the occasion. Rose had a quiet, understated beauty. Her features were regular rather than striking. Her build slender, but not delicate. Her manner reserved rather than vivacious. Standing beside her were her 2 stepsisters, both considered great beauties with their blonde curls, rose-petal complexions, and the kind of dramatic features that drew immediate attention. They preened and smiled at the assembled men, confident in their ability to secure the wealthiest husband. Rose's father had died 2 years ago, leaving her in the care of her stepmother, Margaret Whitmore, a cold woman who'd made it clear that Rose was a burden she was eager to be rid of. The matching event was Margaret's solution. Marry off all 3 girls at once and collect the bride prices that were customary in these arrangements. Rose always was the plain one. Rose had overheard Margaret telling the event organizer, "Not much to look at, no particular charm or grace. I'm pricing her accordingly, half what I'm asking for my own daughters. Someone might take her for household work, if nothing else." The words had stung, but Rose had learned long ago not to show pain where Margaret could see it. She'd simply stood quietly, kept her eyes down, and prepared herself for whatever came next. Now, as the ranchers walked among the women, assessing them like livestock at market, Rose felt her cheeks burn with humiliation, but she maintained her composure, her hands folded in front of her, her expression neutral. Most of the men barely glanced at her before moving on to her stepsisters. One rancher, older and with mean eyes, looked her up and down and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "This one's too plain for my taste. Need a wife who's pleasant to look at least." Rose felt something inside her shrink, but she kept her face impassive. Then she heard a voice behind her, deep and measured, with a slight edge of anger. "Plain? That's the word you're using?" Rose turned slightly and saw a man she'd noticed earlier standing apart from the other ranchers. He was tall and well-built, probably in his early 30s, with dark hair under a black cowboy hat and wearing a brown vest over a white shirt. Unlike the others who'd been eagerly assessing the women, he'd been watching the proceedings with an expression of growing distaste. This was Nathaniel Cross, owner of the largest and most prosperous ranch in 3 counties. Rose had heard of him. Everyone had. He was wealthy, successful, and notoriously private, rarely coming to town and never attending social events. The older rancher who'd insulted Rose turned to face Nathaniel. "Just stating facts, Cross. Some women are easy on the eyes, some aren't. No use pretending otherwise." "No use pretending you have any sense either, apparently," Nathaniel replied coolly. His eyes moved to Rose, really looking at her for the first time, and something in his expression shifted. "This woman isn't plain. She's elegant. There's a difference. But it takes someone with actual taste to see it." The crowd had gone quiet, everyone watching this unexpected confrontation. "You can't be serious," the older rancher scoffed. "Look at the other options here. Those blonde girls are perfectly nice, I'm sure," Nathaniel interrupted. "But not what I'm looking for. I'm interested in this one." He nodded toward Rose. "If she's available and willing." Margaret Whitmore stepped forward, sensing opportunity but also confusion. "Mr. Cross, I had no idea you were looking for a wife. If I'd known, I would have made special arrangements. I wasn't looking until about 5 minutes ago," Nathaniel said bluntly. "But I find I object strongly to watching decent women being evaluated like cattle. And I especially object to hearing someone described as too plain by a man who clearly wouldn't recognize quality if it bit him." He turned his full attention to Rose. "Miss, what's your name?" "Rose Whitmore, sir." Rose said quietly, startled by the sudden attention. Rose, I'm Nathaniel Cross. I own a ranch about 20 miles north of here. I'm asking if you'd be willing to marry me. This isn't how I imagined proposing to anyone, but circumstances being what they are, I'd like to save you from this spectacle. Rose stared at him, her mind reeling. You don't know me. I know you've been standing here with dignity while people have been appalling. I know your stepmother just tried to sell you for half price, like you're damaged goods, which is unconscionable. And I know I'd rather spend my life with someone who has composure and grace than someone whose only qualification is meeting someone else's arbitrary beauty standard. Margaret interjected, her voice sharp with greed. Mr. Cross, I'm sure we can negotiate a fair bride price. I'll pay you double whatever you are asking for your daughters, Nathaniel said flatly, not taking his eyes off Rose. On the condition that you never contact Rose again after today. She'll be my wife, and I won't have her subjected to people who treated her as less than she is. He looked at Rose directly. But only if you're willing. I won't force this. If you'd rather take your chances with the other ranchers here or wait for another opportunity, I'll respect that. I'm offering you a choice. Rose looked at this stranger who'd just defended her in front of everyone, who'd called her elegant instead of plain, who was offering her escape from Margaret's house and from the humiliation of this auction. She thought about returning to Margaret's house if she wasn't chosen today. About years of being reminded that she was the plain one, the burden, the disappointment. About having no control over her own future. Then she looked at Nathaniel Cross's face and saw something in his eyes. Sincerity. Perhaps, or simply the same distaste for this whole proceeding that she felt. Yes, Rose said, her voice stronger than she felt. Yes, I'll marry you, Nathaniel nodded once, decisively. Then let's conclude this business and get out of here. Within an hour, the arrangements were made. Nathaniel paid Margaret an amount that made the woman's eyes widen with greed, signed the necessary papers, and helped Rose into his wagon. Her few belongings, already packed in anticipation of leaving with whoever chose her, were loaded quickly. As they rode away from the Sullivan Ranch, Rose finally allowed herself to process what had just happened. She'd just agreed to marry a complete stranger because he'd called her elegant and offered her an escape. You must think I'm crazy, Nathaniel said after they'd ridden in silence for several minutes. I think we're both crazy, Rose replied honestly. You just paid a fortune for a wife you don't know, and I just agreed to marry a man I'd never spoken to until 20 minutes ago. Nathaniel's lips quirked in what might have been a smile. Fair point. But Rose, I want you to understand something. When I said I'd save you from that spectacle, I meant it. This marriage can be whatever we need it to be. If you want separate rooms, time to get to know each other, space to figure out what this means, you'll have it. I'm not demanding anything beyond basic respect and honesty. Why did you do it? Rose asked. Really? You could have any woman you wanted. Why step in for someone everyone else called plain? Nathaniel was quiet for a moment, guiding the horses along the dusty road. Because when I looked at you standing there with such dignity while people said terrible things, I saw something they couldn't see. I saw intelligence in your eyes. I saw strength in how you held yourself. I saw grace in your composure. He glanced at her. And I saw someone who deserved better than to be sold like a piece of unwanted furniture. If I can give you that, a life where you're valued, then this will be worth it. But what do you get? Rose asked. Honestly, I've been alone on that ranch for 5 years since my parents died. I built it into something successful, but coming home to an empty house every night, it wears on you. I've thought about finding a wife, but the women in town either want me for my money or can't handle ranch isolation. He looked at her directly. But you, Rose, you didn't seek me out. You didn't know who I was when I offered, and you've already proven you can handle difficult circumstances with grace. That's worth more than conventional prettiness. Over the following weeks, as Rose settled into life at the Cross Ranch, she discovered that Nathaniel had meant every word about giving her space and time. He gave her the largest bedroom in his substantial ranch house while he took a smaller one. He was courteous and respectful, never demanding anything beyond her presence at meals and her company in the evenings, and during those evening conversations, Rose discovered something unexpected. She genuinely liked Nathaniel Cross. He was intelligent and well-read, with strong opinions about everything from politics to poetry. He valued her thoughts, asked her opinions on ranch matters, and treated her as an equal partner rather than ornamental property. Rose also discovered she had a gift for ranch management. She organized Nathaniel's chaotic record-keeping, implemented more efficient systems for tracking cattle and supplies, and even had ideas for improving operations that Nathaniel immediately recognized as brilliant. "Where did you learn all this?" Nathaniel asked one evening as they reviewed accounts together. "Books, mostly," Rose said. "My father had an extensive library before he died. I spent most of my childhood reading everything I could find: agriculture, animal husbandry, business management. Margaret thought it was pointless for a plain girl to educate herself, but I enjoyed learning." "Your stepmother was a fool," Nathaniel said bluntly. "You've improved this ranch's efficiency by 20% in just 6 weeks. That education you got wasn't pointless, it was invaluable." As months passed, Rose realized she was falling in love with her husband. Not because he'd rescued her or because he was wealthy, but because of who he was: thoughtful, principled, and kind. Because he saw value in her that no one else had bothered to look for. Because he made her laugh and challenged her mind and treated her like a partner in every sense. One evening, 8 months into their marriage, Rose found the courage to tell him. They were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, a ritual they'd developed. "Nathaniel, I need to tell you something." He turned to her with his usual attentive expression. "I'm listening." "That day at the Sullivan Ranch, when you offered to marry me, you said this could be whatever we needed it to be. That you weren't demanding anything." "I remember." "I want to change that," Rose said, her heart pounding. "I've fallen in love with you. Not grateful love or dependent love, but genuine love for who you are. I want this to be a real marriage in every sense. If you're willing." Nathaniel set down the glass he'd been holding and reached for her hand. "Rose, I've been in love with you for months. I didn't say anything because I didn't want you to feel pressured or obligated. But loving you has been the easiest thing I've ever done." He lifted her hand and kissed it gently. "That day when I saw you standing there being judged so harshly, something in me recognized something in you. I called it elegant, but that wasn't quite right. You weren't just elegant. You were exactly what I'd been looking for without knowing it. The face I wanted to see every morning. The mind I wanted to engage with every evening. The partner I needed for the life I wanted to build." "They called me too plain," Rose said, tears forming in her eyes. "They were blind," Nathaniel replied firmly. "You're not plain, Rose. You never were. You're beautiful in ways that matter, in your intelligence, your strength, your grace under pressure, your kindness. And yes, you're physically beautiful too, but that's just the least interesting thing about you." He pulled her close. "When I look at your face, I see everything I want for the rest of my life. That's the opposite of plain. That's precious." They kissed as the sun set, transforming their arrangement into something real and lasting. Rose and Nathaniel built an extraordinary life together. The Cross Ranch became known not just for its prosperity, but for being run by one of the smartest partnerships in Texas. Rose's innovations in ranch management were written about in agricultural journals, and other ranchers sought her advice. They had 5 children who were taught from the youngest age that a person's worth has nothing to do with their appearance and everything to do with their character and capabilities. And whenever someone would ask how they met, Nathaniel would tell the story honestly, including the part about Rose being sold for half price because she was considered too plain. Her family called her plain, Nathaniel would say, his arm around Rose, because they couldn't see past surfaces. But I saw exactly what I'd been looking for: intelligence, strength, grace, and beauty that goes bone deep. They thought they were selling damaged goods at a discount. They actually sold me the most valuable thing I ever acquired," Rose would add. "He saw me when everyone else looked through me. He valued me when my own family wouldn't. And he gave me not just a home, but a partnership built on mutual respect. That's worth more than all the conventional beauty in the world." Their story became legendary in Texas, a reminder that the people who judge most harshly often have the poorest judgment. That true beauty is found in character and capability rather than surface appearance, and that sometimes the best things in life come from seeing what others miss, the value hidden in plain sight. If this story reminded you that worth is measured in character rather than appearance, and that the right person will see what others miss, please share it. Subscribe for more stories about finding people who value your true self, about partnerships built on respect, and about proving wrong those who underestimate you. Leave a comment about someone who saw your worth when others didn't, or about learning to value yourself beyond others' judgments. Together we believe everyone deserves to be seen, valued, and loved for who they truly are.